Okay, here I have opened up my Spider software, and also I have downloaded the Loan Prediction Problem CSV file off of Canvas. I've downloaded it and put it into a directory that I use for my Intro to Data Science class. So remember that I said that we're going to be typing down here in the IPython console window, and so we really don't need these other windows. So if you want to, you can kind of adjust this to give yourself some more room with the IPython window here. Now the first thing we want to do is well, let's say the first thing, you can do some of these in different orders, but before we even get started, let's worry about this working directory right here. When we don't have to have it done until we get to the part where we're looking for some data. When we're looking for certain data, Spider's going to look for it in this working directory. So I have downloaded the loan prediction problem CSV file into a folder that I use for Intro to Data Science. So that's where I want to set my working directory. So I'm going to click on the little folder over here. It says browse a working directory. So we're going to browse to find this working directory. So a directory and folder, it means the same thing. So I need to find the folder that I want to use as my working folder. So I'm going to find the one that I used for Intro to Data Science, and that's this one right here. And so I'll say select folder, and now that's set as my working directory. So from now on, if I look for data or I read data out onto my computer, that's where the data is going to be right there. Okay, so now once we have that working directory set, let's go ahead and import pandas so that Python will know that we're going to be using pandas for the pandas library to do some things. So import pandas as PD. Remember, we're just saying as PD so that we don't have to type out the word pandas. We can just use PD instead. Now we want to read in the data from this loan prediction problem CSV file, and we want to save it into a data frame, a pandas data frame. And so here's how we do that. We say df equals, because I've decided to call the data frame df. You could call that anything you want, but I'll just call it df. So on the left I say df equals, and now to the right side I'm going to say that we need to read in this particular data set. So pd.read underscore CSV, and then the name of the file, loan prediction problem.csv. And see, I have a problem here. I didn't, for some reason, I was meant to say PD. I said PER. Now, if I go back, I can go back, as long as I haven't hit enter, I can go back and change that. So I went back and did change that to PD. So that's what I meant to say. Now I'll hit enter, and no news is good news. Nothing happened. It doesn't look like anything happened, but something really did happen. Nothing was displayed, but this data was read into a data frame called DF. Okay, now let's look at DF head. What that will do is show you the first 5 records, and it looks a little funny because the first several columns are listed, and then it decides there's not enough room, so it will then go on. It'll only list the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns, and then it lists all of the records that we want, and then it goes on and lists the next few columns and so on. So it definitely looks a little bit weird. Anyway, this is the point where if your screen doesn't look like this, then there's that command that I mentioned in the video, our lesson video, that I said that you might have to set the settings in a certain way. So go back to this part in the lecture video and find that one setup command that you would need to use, just to type that in so that you see all of these columns and not just a few of the columns listed. Okay, now df.tail will show the last few records. Now for head and tail, we can put an actual number in our command. So head, I could put 10, and instead of the first 5 records, it will show the first 10 records instead. Now notice when it shows these records, it has these records numbered and it starts with 0. So it's going to start with the 0 and then go up to 9, and that represents the first 10 records. That's just kind of a computer thing. A lot of times we start with 0 instead of 1, so don't worry too much about that. Okay, what if we want to see what are the columns that are listed in our that are you know, included in our data? So we can type df, that's the name of our data frame, and then dtypes. And we see all of the columns, and it also will let us know the types that they are. So you see a lot of them are labeled object. That's just mostly just going to be like a character string. So we call it a string. But then some of these are integers, which are basically whole numbers we could consider, and then some are decimal numbers here. These are float. But don't worry too much about these different types, but just know that this df types will show these all of the different columns that are included in our data. Now the describe function is really nice. df.describe. We can see a lot of information. For all of the columns that are numerical columns, you see it's telling us the count of all of those, the mean, standard deviation, and so on. So if I were to ask for what is the mean of the loan amount, you'll come over to the loan amount and then go and look which one represents the mean. It's the second one down. And so the loan amount, the mean loan amount is 146 and .41 or whatever. Now I think these are in thousands of dollars, so I think that represents $146,000 instead of just $146. If I asked for the median of applicant income, we'd see here's the applicant income. The median, it is not listed as a median, but the 50th percentile is the same thing as a median. So it's what value cuts the data in half, so that there's just the same number of values below it as there are above it. And so we'd say that the median is this. And I think that these income values are in terms of income per month. I think that's what that means. Okay, now another command that's really nice is the sort values command. If I say df.sort values, it will want to know, well, how do you want me to sort? Do you want me to sort by, which column? So let's say we want to sort by applicant column. And you can use single quotes or double quotes anytime. So sometimes I might use a double quote and you use single quotes, and it's all okay. Either one would work. So applicant income, and finish that off. So that's going to sort my values by applicant income. Now let's think about this. Am I going to see something here or not? Is it going to display something or do something? So think about that a minute. Okay, it's going to display something, right? If I hit enter, there it listed all of those records, and almost, I mean, not all in this, because it would say ... and not show everything, but it just gives you a lot of the records, shows you a lot of the records sorted by applicant income. It just showed you because we just said to sort. We didn't say put the new sorted values into a new data frame. If we wanted the data frame itself to be sorted by values, we would do something like this instead. I'm going to push the up arrow key, and anytime you want to type in something that you've already typed in, like the last thing I typed in, if I hit the up arrow key, that's what I typed in. And so I don't have to type it again, just the up arrow key, and I can cycle through, keep hitting up arrow until I find the one I wanted if I want. And now I'm going to hit the down arrow to go back. So I'm going to go back to this last one, but instead of saying df.sort values, I can say df equals sort values. And then now we hit enter, it shows nothing because we didn't say to display it. That's what it would have done if we left off the df equals. But since we said df equals, it's not just sorting it and showing us. It's actually sorting those values and then creating a new data frame that's now in this new order. Okay, and we can do any of that if we want to. What if I want to find the top 5 values of the applicant income? So I could do this. Let's say I hadn't sorted it, and let's say I hadn't said the df equals. And if I hadn't, then it wouldn't be sorted yet. And so what if I didn't want to do that because I wanted to keep my original data frame, but I wanted to sort the values, and then I wanted to see, let's say the highest, let's say we want the 5 highest applicant income values. So I could say, well, okay, I'm just going to sort it just for now so I can look at it, and then let's look at the tail. And if I look at the tail, that's going to, all I do is just add this dot tail after this other sort values command, and then it's going to display what it would if it puts it in the order of applicant income, but it's only going to display the last 5 records in that sorted order. So here I can then easily see what are the top applicant income values. So here we see for under applicant income, we see these different values here. So those would be the top values because we know we've sorted them, and then we've seen the last 5 records, so we know those would be the highest ones. If we wanted the smallest ones, we could do the same thing, but type in head, and then that shows the highest ones, and we see here's that shows the first 5 records, which are the lowest values, and we see those here. Okay, now if I do something like this, df, and then in square brackets put the name of a column, so I'm going to say loan ID. Notice I used double quotes, and in our example we used single quotes. Let's see if it works. Okay, so see, it worked just fine. So I think single and double quotes anytime work fine as long as you have a matching pair. So anyway, here it shows just those loan ID values. So that's the only thing it shows. Again, it doesn't show everything because it says ... But if you wanted to create a new data frame that had just those values, you could do that. So instead of df.loanid, I don't have these in the notes, but I could say I could create a new data frame, just loan IDs equals that, and then it shows nothing because I didn't ask it to show me. I just said to put those values in a new data frame. So now if I want to look at that data frame now, and I said load, I had a typo in there, so I'm going to go ahead and call it load, but you would probably call it loan IDs. See, it's there.
The next command we talked about is the LOC command. If we type this in, df.loc, and then list which rows we want. In our example, we said the rows labeled 3 through 5, so it's starting at 3, and then a colon, meaning going all the way up to 5. That would specify which rows we want, and then we'll have a comma, and then which we would also then list which columns we'd like. So I'll go ahead and list in the square brackets applicant income and loan amount. We have to have 2 two square brackets at the end because there were two beginning square brackets. Now, you'd think that this should show us those particular records and then just these two column names. So there is a problem here. If I enter this right now, I'm not going to get what I thought I would get because you see that it says it's an empty data frame. Now, here's why this isn't working. It should be working, but do you remember a few minutes ago I went ahead and reordered the data frame because I said something like df equals df dot sort values, and then I sorted by applicant income. And I'll just say dot dot dot. So when I did that, we won't type this in, but when I did that and I put a column name inside those parentheses, I reordered the data set. So once you reorder the data set, then this LOC command does not work as we thought, as we would expect. So if I hadn't reordered that data set, I wouldn't be getting this empty data frame. So when you use this LOC command, just try to only do it if you're working with the original data set that came in instead of one that's been reordered. So I'm going to show you that it'll work. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to push the up arrow key a few times in order to find what the command when I first read in the data. So here's what I used to read in the data, and we can always do that if our data frame gets messed up at all and we want to just start over. We can go to this, wherever we read in the CSV data, and run this again, and then we'll get the data frame to start out being exactly like what it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. Now we have the regular DF, the one that we had to begin with. Now if I type this LOC command, it should work because it hasn't been reordered. So it should be able to find then the rows that are labeled 3 up through 5, and then just display the applicant income and the loan amount. Okay, so you see it just showed 3 records, 3, 4, and 5, and it just showed the 2 columns. Let's see, what else should we do? Let's look at the filtering capabilities. So if I want to just look and see those values that have a loan amount greater than 500, I can type DF, and then in the square brackets I can put my the condition that I'd like to be true. So I can say DF dot loan amount greater than 500. And so now that, notice I didn't put DF equals there, so I'm not going to be replacing my data frame, I'm just going to be displaying this temporarily. So let's go ahead and enter that, and you see that looks like we only got just a few records because there are only a few records that had that, that large of a loan amount. And remember then, if I did that instead of that, if I did DF equals, I won't enter this because I don't want to change my data frame. But if I did want to change my data frame and only have those values that had loan amounts greater than 500, I would do this. I would hit enter after that. Okay, let's look at one of these conditions where we want to have an equal, something equaling something. So let's say we do, if we look up here and see education, we see that the values are graduate, and we don't see it here, but there we remember that there the different graduates. We had graduate, and then let's come up here and look. Graduate, and then I'm looking to find some. I think it was not graduate. I think that was it. I'm not finding it here. But anyway, let's say that we want to just do something similar to what we just did with a filter, but we want to use an equal sign because we want to use some concept of equality. So I'll say df.education. Okay, equals, and let's say that we want it to equal graduate. Now, we can't just type graduate like this because the value of education is a string value and it's a string of characters. So we need to put it in either single quotes or double quotes. So I'll put single quotes, graduate, and so now that's going to only show us those values now that has the education value set at graduate. So notice that had a lot more rows than the filter that we used a minute ago. Let's do the df.mean. And you see what that gives us. There are several different columns that have numerical data in it. So when we say df.mean, it's going to tell us the mean of all of these columns. So we can get those means really easily. And we can also do this type of thing for other type of aggregations like count, df.count. And this says how many loan IDs there are, how many genders are in there, and married, and so on. Now these aren't distinct values, so for gender, it's not like there's 601 different values that can be in there, but what this means is that for 601 records, there is a gender listed. Okay, we can also do max, so df.max, and then we can see for those columns that are, well, I was going to say for those columns that are numerical, but it looks like they've also included columns that are not numerical, and that makes sense because if we have a column that's just a string of characters, when we talk about the minimum and the maximum, or when we're talking about those, what we're really talking about is that we're pretending that we have gone ahead and put them in alphabetical order, and then the minimum would be the first one in alphabetical order. The maximum would be the last one. So that's why we see, when we said max, not only do we see the largest applicant income and the largest co-applicant income and so on, we also see for education, it lists not graduate, and that's because the two options for the education value were graduate and not graduate, and since we asked for the max between graduate and not graduate, if we put those in alphabetical order, not graduate would be the last one, so that's why that would become the max. And for property area, you see urban is listed there for the max because that's the one that's comes at the end if we put everything in alphabetical order. You see, it also worked for loan status. Okay, now the group by command. So remember, that's really important when we want to do aggregation. Like we did when we did aggregation with 9, we used a node called group by, and we also use now a command called using group by when we're doing it within Python and Pandas. So I'm going to say df.groupby. Do education, and what do I want? Once I group these, I have to think about what am I wanting? Am I wanting the mean? Am I wanting the maximum or the minimum? So I'll just do mean here. And so what you see is we said we wanted to group by education, so we see the two different types of education, graduate and not graduate, and we see the mean of each of these columns that have a numerical value. So we see applicant income mean for just those who graduated. So this just shows this is information when we're ignoring any records for non-graduates, but we just care about graduates, and it finds the mean there, and then here it finds the same thing for not graduates. Let's do one we haven't talked about yet, is we can do the sum. Not that it would really mean anything here in this context of our loan applications, but just so you know, you can do something like this where you add up all the values. So if that were if we type that in, and then what it would do is it would still break it up, because we use the group by part. It'll break it up by those who've graduated and then those who haven't. But then instead of finding the mean or anything else, it'll actually add up all those values. Again, in this context, that sum doesn't really seem to mean anything, really. Wouldn't really give us any information. But again, those for this group by, we can use count, maximum, just saying, we'll just say max, min, sum, mode, median, and there's others too. Okay, we're almost done. Let's talk about the value counts. So if I type df and then say the name of some column that would be one like a categorical column. So df, and then let's go with property area. Dot value counts. Then it lists what are the different property area types there. What are the different categories? There's semi-urban, urban, rural, and it then tells us how many of each. We could do that for something else, like maybe we didn't remember what the education values were. So we can come in here and do that and see that there are just the two values, graduate and not graduate, and we see how many are graduates and how many aren't. Okay, we haven't really changed the data frame, DF, except that, let's see, DF, looks like, yeah, I went back and I got the data from the very beginning, so that it's not ordered by any column like we had done at one point. So this data is really probably looks exactly like what it looked like when we first brought it in. So let me just change it a little bit. Let's come up with something that just we can change it, and then we're going to show how to save this into a CSV file. So let's say that we just want, maybe we just want it ordered in a different way. Let's see, what else could we do? I'm trying to think what would be a good thing to do. Okay, let's do this instead. Instead of that, let's say we want to filter it. So we want to filter by a condition and only get those records of a certain property area. Okay, so let's say let's create a new data file, a new data frame. Let's call it just urban. So that'll be the name of our data frame, and then we'll put in a filter. So we'll say df df, and then square brackets, and then what's our condition? Df dot property area, and then equals. And remember, we need to have two equal signs if we have a condition that involves equality. And then let's say, and then quotes urban. Okay, so let's think about that. We're on the right-hand side. We're looking at DF, but we're just finding those records that have a property area. Property area? Is that the name of the type? Yeah, that is what it's called. That column is called property area, I guess. So we're finding those that have a property area equal to urban, and then we're saving that in a data frame called just urban. So I'll hit enter, and it didn't show anything, and that's okay because it did something, but we didn't tell it to display anything. We just we told it to put that in there. If I type just urban, I'll see what got put in there. And if I look through that, from what I can tell, although everything's not there because they have the ... but it looks like all of these records seem to just have urban values for the property area. Okay, so now let's say, now that we have a new data frame, let's say that we want to save that to a new CSV file. So this one example here is going to be different than what it was in our notes. So I had just called that just urban, so I'm going to say just urban dot to CSV, and I'm going to say urban, call it urban, I can call it whatever I want to, urban loan requests .csv. And remember that, again, looking up here at the very top here where we have the working directory, we want to realize that whatever it's set at, right here I have it set for my folder that I use to put in information from our Intro to Data Science class. Whatever that's set to, that's where this new data file is going to go. Okay, so just urban.tocsv, and then I've listed the name. When I hit enter, nothing happens. So hopefully that, I mean, not hopefully, I'm sure it's true, that it saved it in the right spot. So if I were to go and find that folder, the one that's the working folder, I should see a new file in there, urban loan requests. So let me go in there. Here I'm in the right folder, and I sorted by date modified, and here it is. It says urban loan requests, so it's there. Okay, so that shows you how to do a lot of these things now in using pandas and Python as opposed to using something like 9.